Okay,
Or
I'm about to go live. Sorry.
you are live.
I am live.
You are
Hello,
live.
everybody.
Hi. Oh,
Yeah, Nicholas and I were just talking about how I need an intro, don't I? Maybe I'll
yes.
get maybe I'll get Carl to do an intro for me like he did for you because I know Carl is embarrassed by how kind of organic and not planned out your intro is, but that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah. It's tongue in cheek and it's a little self defamating, and a lot of people would take offense or wouldn't be able to handle that. But honestly, it's so on brand for me that it's so much fun. Everybody I talk to loves it. So you really should talk to. And we're talking about Carl Witzman for the people who may not know. He's a wonderful gentleman. He's the author of The Mad Gasser of Mattoon County and several other books. Wow, I reflexively went to run his ad, but he he's such a neat guy, and he runs Uncle Carl's Secret Humor Group.
Yeah, I think everybody
Um,
here knows Carl, and everybody loves Carl.
well, everyone should love Carl. And let me see. Okay, there we are. I see the comments now, which will make it my end a lot easier to deal with it. An intro and an advertisement. Yes. Well, he's just starting. Guys, give Grant a little room. He's just getting started, and he's on the free plan for StreamYard, which is a little limited compared to the paid plan. Huge shout out to Joe Bachman and IndieCD.org for paying for mine. Uh,
Yeah, Joe's a good guy as well.
oh, absolutely. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. So this is the second program you've done in the series, right, Grant?
Exactly. The first episode was kind of just me without a guest, but I did end up having an impromptu guest, which, believe it or not, she is in the chat right now. You can probably
Oh,
guess who she is. Or actually,
and
I don't know if have you ever talked to my wife Angie before?
I have not had the pleasure, although I look forward to it.
Yeah, she's a pretty awesome lady. She comes with me to a lot of the conventions we do, and she's going to have a story in the next volume of my comic book memoirs of the morbid, and I could not have planned a better segue than that because I mentioned that I was going to display a few pages from the next volume of my comic book, Memoirs of the Morbid, each week.
Oh,
I mean,
wonderful.
if you watch every week and you do like screenshots, you could almost have your own comic book. But
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, in this world of piracy, one that as soon as it's released on a digital format, especially, or somebody gets a scanner, your stuff's going to get pirated. But if they're going to take the dedication to do that, you almost
right,
got to admire the effort, you know?
that's exactly what was going through my head. So I'm not worried about that aspect of it. So let's show some of the art that I have.
I love
Um,
this, by the way. I really
Thanks.
do. I know nothing of the subject, but it has that slightly grown Charlie Brown feel just because the character closest has that, distinct profile.
So the name of this comic book is it's the truly repugnant pumpkin Charlie, last name redacted, and last name redacted is in parentheses. So it's obviously a parody of Charlie
Charlie
Brown.
Brown. Which is wonderful because one, that means with no knowledge whatsoever, at a glance, I caught everything you were shooting for. No,
Well, thanks.
that means
I'm
you
glad it
artistically
worked.
did your job,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
this is great fun. That's especially Halloween around Charlie Brown is one of my favorite like chunks to kind of play with alternate universes. So
Right.
I've seen a few that were done, some very well, some not so well. Um,
Yeah, I think actually a couple people in chat have already read the story. Donna read it and Angie read it, but I'm still working on the art. So this is going to be page 1 of my story, and then this is going to be the last page. And obviously, yeah, as you can tell, I'm completely finished with this page. No, I'm just joking.
right, you know what? It's still higher quality than some uh, more larger company works. There is a certain studio apartment that I believe uh, Batgirl had that still haunts my dreams. So at least I can see the framing, I can see the style. It's good.
So the idea is I want the show to, or the story to kind of mirror itself. You
Right,
know,
right.
they're walking into the pumpkin patch here. They're walking out of the pumpkin patch here, and obviously, I just copied and pasted these into to the. I'm not going to leave it like this. I'll embellish it. And I was talking about finding better photo reference for this drawing on top, but
Okay.
I was having trouble finding photo reference. I I don't I don't like the idea of googling the phrase "child bent over" because I'll probably get put on some type of wait watch list. You know what I mean?
Um, I think that is one of the great fears we all have to deal with these days. But if you put child carving a pumpkin, you know, you should be able to find in profile.
Right.
You should be able to find something close, or it's I hate it. Sounds terrible, but I hate that the perverts have ruined everything fun for us. Like I really wish there was something that I could just type in that, because I do one of the things I do is big stompy robots, and I do some work with modern style gaming, so I have to look up different firearm systems. Or
Yeah.
I'm writing a horror book, and okay, you're defending yourself against zombies in the gas station. What do you have? What can somebody who knows what they're doing improvise? And it's very easy to look like, oh no, this is horrific. It's like, no, I'm not trying to get a certain cookbook. I'm just trying to write a spooky story where some people can hold their own, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every writer has that problem, and I feel like if the FBI is ever going to investigate any of us, we should be able to just say, "Well, I'm a writer," and that pretty much explains it all. But now that I'm thinking about it, I guess any terrorist could just say, "I'm a writer." Actually, now that I
I,
think about it, sorry.
what I would look at it is this way: you're already being investigated.
Yeah,
I mean, even if it's not active, there are passive systems doing it. Um,
yeah,
so why I hate to say why stress too much about it if you're really not doing anything wrong.
right,
You just do the best you can, and it shouldn't be. We look for obstacles to throw in our way, I think.
right. Well, I was just gonna say, I think wasn't that Winona Ryder's defense when she stole all that stuff? She said it was like research for a movie or something like that.
Um, I you hear that a lot, but the big difference would be if you could then go, and here's the evidence, here's the script of the movie, here are the movie producers, here are
Right.
you know.
Well,
So,
I mean, also, I mean, you can't do illegal stuff
well, yeah.
and then just say, "Oh, well, I was doing it for research." I mean, it's still illegal whether you're doing it for research or whether you have other motives. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's more, people really need to look up what is and isn't illegal. because there needs to be freedom of information. I'm a former
Right.
librarian. I'm married to a librarian. My brother's a librarian. There's a lot of and we're very possessive of the concept of information needs to be available for everybody, because the same tool set can be used to do tremendous harm as do tremendous good, but we can't let fear impede our ability to distribute raw information. Facts
Right.
don't change. It's how it's manifested, and it starts to get very dangerous as a concept if we start saying, well, these are good facts and these are bad facts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. I think where it becomes a gray area is like, I want to learn about the facts of building a bomb. Like, then it can be a little bit dicey.
Well, and it all comes down to, as long as you're not actually doing it. I
Right.
mean, there's the case where somebody made a functioning, very small nuclear reactor in their basement as part of a science class.
Oh
Now,
my God.
yeah, they pulled it off, and they entered it into the like science fair, and the Department of Energy showed up and politely, and they were actually, everybody was very polite because it was like a 15-year-old kid.
Oh
They, they
wow.
they politely took the project and secured it somewhere else, and explained you're not really supposed to do that in application. But I think a lot of it goes to the reasoning behind it. It's like, you look at it like, I carry a knife everywhere with me because my hands won't let me tear things, you
Okay.
know? And yes, I do know how to use knives offensively, but this is a tool. Could it be used as a weapon? Sure. So could a brick or a rock or nearly anything. It's all based on the intent at the end of the day. And in this case, I think you're just, unless it is a very pronounced pattern,
Right.
I wouldn't worry too much. And I think a lot of uh, authors, like I said, we will pull fantastic obstacles to keep us from being able to do what we need to do to get a project completed. I that much creativity finds its odd habit of manifesting in procrastination.
Fair
So
enough.
I wouldn't worry. And
All
this
right.
is this
So
is very talented. This is a neat, like, I can already see, even from your thumbnailing, that this is a neat paced project.
cool. Thank you. So let's move on to the next page. So this next page is a cover, which is why it's in color. Because the rest of the comic book is going to be in black and white. Now, this is a cover that I showed last week, and I showed it kind of saying, okay, I think it's done. But the more I look at it, the more I think, you know what? I think there's still little details I can get in this.
Well, okay, first I have to ask. This is, of course, an homage to Evil Dead, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, because that's very much a Bruce Scott Campbell looking character,
Yeah.
and the imagery of the way the faces are coming out of the root goo
Right.
mess. And you're talking to the guy who did a mustachioed desert survivalist in an RPG and named him Burt Nevada. So please do not think it's accusatory. Okay.
yeah.
Um, but my question I would ask is, what do you think you could add to this that would add to the image?
So the main thing is I want there to be a little bit of a gap between the background and the kind of like ghost type characters that are kind of supposed to be more in the foreground. So I don't know if that's going to mean making the background darker or or changing it to a different color. I
Um,
kind of want to keep it in this kind of analogous uh, color scheme where it's.
Would it be at the
Sorry, go
risk of
ahead.
would it be possible to add a blur layer and then simply erase out around the faces and the main character, blurring the background just a bit? So maybe duplicate, add blur to it, and
Yeah,
then erase it from there. Because I think what you're looking for would be more of a subtle effect than
right.
a dramatic workup. Because I can see where you want the dimensionality to be a little more clear, but
Hmm.
either with I mean, just a multiply layer and some very light shading, or or again, a blur effect on, everything but the main character and the faces themselves could make it a little easier to tell the depth.
Yeah. So Angie is telling the truth here. I think we tried a couple different colors, and I think the um, the green one ended up looking the nicest. The green
Well,
and blue.
it's neat because so many of us were raised watching Disney films, and Disney has this lovely shorthand of lime green being the default evil color.
Right.
And I think this reaches into that subconscious where
Well,
if you had done this with like a red motif, it would look extremely gory and meaty and uncomfortable.
right.
And I think with what you have here,
I did try
it
red.
it's it's gross without being overpowering. You want, almost grotesque without being gross, if that makes sense.
Right. So I did include a page here from the interior from this story. Um, Now I should mention that I did not do this art. This
Okay.
is Alberto Pessoa. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. So the idea is that this guy, he's a former baseball player, and he's he kind of finds himself at a low point in his life. He's a janitor at a I don't know what the, I guess, assisted living
Okay.
house home, and these ghosts are kind of feeding on the elderly people there.
Okay. It looks like they're drawing on his because is he seeing them as, is this as an attack where he's trying to hit them with a baseball bat, or is he
So,
hallucinating something?
so I should have mentioned that he puts holy water on this bat,
Okay.
and that's how he's able to make contact with these ghosts.
That no, that makes a lot of sense, but this is one of those where there, just on the images there were a lot of ways to read it, and
Hmm.
it almost looks like the ghosts were building a hallucinatory baseball game around him
Oh,
to
okay.
keep, you see where it would like keep him lulled while maybe they were siphoning his life force or something.
Yeah, that. You know what? You should write that story.
I am really really good at pulling nothing, pulling stuff out of nearly nothing. Um, I love when people hand me a brick and I get to hand a castle back. Uh, it's one of my art tricks, which I may do as a bit of entertainment later when it comes to that. But no, I love the depth of this art. We were just talking about dimensionality, and the different line weights are so good,
Yeah,
and it's such a distinct visual style that I think your artist should have a name for themselves very quickly, because it's both quality, but it's distinct. It's
yeah,
because it's like you can see the classic, almost Kirby era um, influence in your janitor, right?
Well,
I mean
I see.
that
Sorry,
picture almost looks like a rendering of young Jack Kirby,
I
but
see a lot of Mike Mignola
Yeah, see, but in the
in
ghosts,
this.
it's all Mike Mignola, you
Yeah,
know. So it's really it's somebody who understands both historical classics and modern classics, either by design or innately. And I love it. I love how it feels like you should be able to just reach off and take the kind of girl ghost looking face over here and pull the sticker right off the screen and throw it aside if you wanted to. Do you see what I'm saying with the
yeah,
way that's layered? It's just so good, and I am a sucker for a good frame break.
right,
I love frame breaks like that, and it's done
yeah,
subtly. It's just the composition is there.
yeah. I like that too. So Donna is saying, I told him if I ever did anything, they would not find these books, nor would they be able to prove I ever had them. Cash sales. Wow, I'm surprised you do all cash sales. You don't. When I go to
Yeah.
conventions, I mean, I love cash sales, but um, I'm not lucky enough to just do cash sales.
Fortunately for me, I've been doing conventions with uh, Joe
Joe
Bachman.
Bachman.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he brings his square, so he handles the card based
Okay.
things, and then PayPal's me the difference, and we handle the cash things and handle making all the change and stuff. It's a good system,
Oh, so I
but
didn't. So I didn't realize this. So she said she only takes cash on her how-to criminal books.
yeah,
So that's interesting. I guess if you're gonna read how-to criminal books, you probably should just do cash. I mean, carry a little bit of cash on you if you want to buy books
how
on how to do illegal stuff, right?
I uh I feel bad because I'm a medieval writer, and I mean I teach Western swordsmanship, and I've dealt with Eastern swordsmanship and knife techniques and all this stuff. So I've read military manuals and historical manuals. And because I'm a game designer, I only write or do what I know. So I've looked up assorted, like, I write things involving rogues. So the whole list of rogue talents are things I've looked into for the purpose of making sure that it makes sense uh, in game. Because I always find incidents where, like, anybody who knows how lock picks work. Seeing somebody pick a lock with one wire breaks the immersion,
Oh, okay.
because it takes at least two objects to do it without
Right.
getting into too much detail. And I grew up with, my father's a combat veteran, so if we watched something, especially from the Vietnam era, he'd be just fact checking and the whole time, and it made for a very interactive way of watching movies, but it sort of ingrained the importance of, if you're going to write something, it's best to know as much as possible about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I, I don't think folks should be scared of that. I believe, well, if the difference between a nerd and a geek, I don't know if you know this. The difference between a nerd and a geek is, a nerd is someone who excels in academic studies and you know usually practical STEM style knowledge. Usually, a geek is someone who's more in its original definition, uh, more focused. Well, not the fully original, that involves swallowing undigestible things, but the modern geek is in collectibles and like canon discussions and sci-fi thing. So you take the Star Trek fan who is focused on, I have the uniform and I have the autographs and stuff, is by definition more of a geek. Whereas a nerd would be the one more likely, the person goes, well, that doesn't work scientifically, but that could. And you know what? I can explain it. What for? What is force? If you say mass times volume, uh, you're a nerd. If you say you know the power that flows through us and binds us together, you're a geek.
Right.
It, in my case, I am a geek who collects nerdly interests and vice versa because I collect random skill sets like some people collect trading cards.
Okay.
So it makes it interesting. Don't
You're a
give too
little
much.
bit of both.
Yeah. And it's just it gives you this unique thing. Yes, I'm trying to keep him distracted from spoilers,
I
Angie.
don't. I don't. I think I stopped like right before I got to anything that would spoil it. Right.
Mostly. You got right up on it. I'm
Okay.
just I've done a lot of shows with Luke Stone, and I love Luke, but that man loves to spoil his own work constantly, and it's frustrating
That's funny.
because I'll know what's going on ahead of time, but I'm not allowed to. And for the very good reasons I'm not allowed to spoil stuff, he shouldn't till it's been out. So
Right.
we all need somebody like Angie in our lives to pause and go, hey, maybe step back a bit. But
So let's go on. We have
yeah, please.
one. We have one last page. Oops, that's not the last page. So this is exciting. The artist who was working on this page, or this story, sent me all of the pages at one time.
Oh wow.
So, and this is going to be. This is not only going to be like the bloodiest story in the book. It's going to be the only. I would say this is going to be the only story that has any gore whatsoever uh, in Memoirs of the Morbid, which I think is a good thing
Oh
because
yes.
I've been putting that for mature readers thing on there, and there hasn't really been anything in the comic books that qualifies as R rated. But so this time, in fact, the reason why I chose to show this page, you're probably wondering why I put this page on there because there's not really much happening in this page.
Oh no, but it this gives you just a tour de force of what the artist can do
Right.
because the backgrounds, the shading. I love grayscale. I'm a sucker for grayscale, especially when used in conjunctions with a little splash of color at the right moment. But
Right.
this is all it smacks of Junji Ito, the Japanese horror manga creator.
You know what?
And
I don't know a lot about manga, to be honest with you.
that's okay, but this is very believable, and I love not seeing superheroic proportions in comics, if that makes sense.
Right.
I'm personally really burnt out on the cape and tights crowd, especially in comics. It's
Right.
just I have been for a long time, but like look at the rim lighting on this officer whose back is to us. It is
Yeah.
so subtly and masterfully handled.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is going to be a really cool little section. It looks so much different than all the other sections, and like I was saying earlier, if you guys want to see more from Memoirs of the Morbid, you guys just have to keep coming back
Well,
every
and
week.
that's how you're going to get at least a few people hooked,
Yeah.
and then they'll want people will what they'll get is that investment in the story, investment in the characters before they fully know them, and that's going to drive sales. I mean, that's just good good business, let alone quality entertainment. I'm sure the chat agrees. And right now, they're all hilariously talking about how to cover one's derriere as an author, but
Right.
that's okay too. The chat should have its own life. That means your show is
Yeah,
blooming.
certainly never mind the furthermore has its own life, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that is one of those great privileges that I wake up kind of shocked that I'm permitted to do. Um, because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, and BKM, Brian K. Morris, just in case anyone watching this doesn't know about Nevermind the Furthermore, uh, is going to
I
wake
think
up and go,
everybody's
"What?
here.
What did I do?" Well, the goal is to attract new people. So
Right,
even when everybody here currently knows what's going on, you usually have a few lurkers, especially as the show goes on. This is gonna be going on for a long time, so a lot of people will go to your first video and work their way down when they
right.
find the playlist. So we wanna always build a nice smooth ramp of entry into the pool that is whatever our programming is.
I am glad that you started talking about never mind the furthermore though, because I realized we've been talking for quite a while, and I haven't introduced you yet. But-
That's all right. Um,
So I think everybody here knows you, but like you said, for people who are watching this in the future, Nick is a man of many, many talents. It can be very difficult to pigeonhole you.
Thank you.
Um, among so just I mean a short list. You are an artist. You
Yes.
are a talk show host. You are a swordsman, um, and you're also a game designer.
Yep.
Um,
Uh, I that's a good start on a lot of the things I do. Like I said, I collect uh I collect skills the way people collect trading cards. What
right,
I really see myself as if I'm working at my best is I am a footstool. Okay? My job, my goal, kind of my life's mission is to fold my hands like this and give people a boost to the next level that they're trying to get to. Um,
right.
so sometimes that's because I've spent the last 30 years running different RPGs. I've done the whole DMing and GMing and all that across more systems than can count. So giving people the idea of how to escape their mind a bit and find new ideas and new ways of thinking, and then come back to the world with a sense of a little bit more wonder and a little more. I have more that I can be. Because for me, early on, one of my driving things was I wanted to be able to do as many of the things that my characters could do.
Oh, okay.
So that's what led me to our earlier mention of a little bit of nefarious. I did a little. We had lock picking competitions, and I was trying to get into the what is it? It's Tool, the organization of something lockpickers, and I can't remember the third O. But basically, they treat it like a puzzle. There's no. It's sort of like white hat hackers. There's no puzzle. There's no nefariousness in the use of the
They
skills.
just
It's
like the
just
challenge.
yeah. Um, I can sword fight. I can throw knives. I can make knives. I can make swords. I can do all the stuff. But instead of just sitting there, I always go from the angle: how can I use this to build somebody up? So for the last 20 years or so, I have been teaching people to sword fight who either had physical limitations or experienced trauma, suicide survivors, rape survivors, PTSD veterans, people with, like I said, other traumas or the physical limitations. Their body doesn't work like normal, so other people wouldn't be willing to teach them. Whereas I developed a means to find how they move and then show them how to work with that.
Okay.
Uh, And that's where a lot of my books kind of root. It's growing confidence and perspective, and building that you have the ability to affect change into the environment you're in. And
Right.
so my art is my escape, and my playing with different concepts. And from there, I've been a after school art instructor for kids. I've done many different programs teaching children, the basics of very rudimentary cartooning, because that's where I live. I live in the world of, I like to have a basic knowledge of any given interesting skill in hopes that it will build somebody up to pursue more on their own, a
Yeah,
sort of planned obsolescence.
it's not
And that
necessarily a bad idea, right? To know a little bit of everything.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, Carl says weapon therapy, and absolutely. If you can get a young lady who has endured physical trauma at the hands of men to the point where she's afraid to look them in the eye, comfortable enough that she can take up arms and fight, you know, in a sparring session, she can have she can develop the confidence to say no when someone tries something. And that's a lot of the attitude. So with what I do with the talk shows, uh, I have three primary programs that I'm on now currently. I'm the host of the Historical Fencing Guild, which is how I connect to my sword students, both local and abroad, and we cover gear and topics
right.
and training and facilities, things like that. How to learn. Oh, sometimes we review weapons for amusement, stuff like that. But never mind the furthermore, which is most known to the current audience, is a talk show where authors, artists, other creatives can all come. And one, it's an opportunity to be held accountable. So a lot of people will come on and say, "Okay, this is my accountability for today. I'm dealing with this. I did that. I'm dealing with this. I did that." And then I have this project out, and I can show a commercial and we can talk about it. Sometimes I get guests on. A lot of times it's just the chat hopping and they have questions about what we do, how everything from I've never set up a booth and I need, how much change should I bring, to okay, what kind of literary devices should I be using, and how do I affect tropes in my writing? And from there I can connect people to other people who are other writers or are editors or things, so
Yeah, it's
that
kind
it builds a network that lifts everybody up. I'm sorry, you were saying?
it's kind of a show where like you can kind of talk about anything, right?
Right, right.
I mean,
It's we're all a bunch. To the people who tend to write tend to be on the fringes a bit. Artists of any sort, and I can count authors in the artist bubble, travel on the edges of society in some aspect of their life. And we find groups like ourselves there. And that means there are other problems that happen over the course of that where we understand. Unfortunately, depression uh, runs heavily in creatives, substance abuse
yeah.
problems, health problems.
I,
Many times, creatives are. I know I fall under that category. You maintain the mental creativity so that when you need to escape the pain or other issues you have in your body, you can. What
oh,
a
yeah.
prisoner's first duty is to escape. And if reality it feels like a prison to you, you escape to fantasy. If your body feels like a prison, you escape to art and music. If your finances, are a prison, you escape to fantasy of a more personal style.
Yeah,
Fantasizing.
yeah.
We all have to escape certain burdens to make life worth living, and then if we do it right, we come back to our life where we can see the wonder that we may have missed otherwise. And that's if I can get people to occasionally pause and go, wow, that's a pretty sunset, and realize whatever's going on, no matter how bad work is or whatever, there's still beauty in the world, or
Yeah.
doing one small kind thing, it's a contagious form of light that doesn't cost anything, just a little bit of time and attention. And I'm about that. I'm never going to be protagonist energy. You know, it'll never be up in the sky, the bird, it's a plane, it's Super Nick. No, no. I'm the little guy who's like, you look hungry. Would you like, I got a granola bar. Here you go. And in that moment, somebody's less hungry and they know somebody cares about it. Those little moments, that small good does more to stave off the darkness than legions of superheroes, in my opinion, because that's what holds day in and day out.
So I
I'm
did want
sh-
to get to some
yeah,
of the comments.
please.
I'm this is just so you guys know, this show isn't going to be like never mind the furthermore. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all of the comments, but I'm going to try to do as many as I can. Uh, so Joe Bachman is coming in, the fact that he likes the art. Thank you, Joe. I think yeah, I think I was able to get a lot of really talented people for this anthology, and yeah, I'm really excited for everybody to see it. And Carl is kind of chiming in. Yeah, he thinks both artists are good, but especially the artist who sent all the art at once. So I should mention his name is Pete Collins. Uh, did I already close out of the? Yeah, I already closed out of. But you guys know, you guys remember what it looked like.
Right,
Um,
right. Would it be possible to add later the artist's direct links in the description?
that's that's like you mean like in the description. That's actually a really great idea. I'm glad you mentioned that. So we kind of already touched on that. Angie is saying, thankfully we have cats, which help with rough days and lots of hugging in our house. Yeah, we're definitely huggers. We're huggers and we're hand holders, and we're an affectionate couple. Let's put it that way.
Well, and see, you shouldn't feel the need to apologize for that. I think it's a wonderful thing. And it's no, no, seriously, I think that it's tragic that people who have found joy have to um, feel that they need to apologize because some other people haven't yet.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't I wasn't laughing at what you were saying. I was looking at Joe's comment. He said that we need to do a drawing of a flying manatee man with a cape. So
nope.
okay, so that's a question that I have for you. How did the manatee man? Well, okay, whichever one of these topics you feel like bringing up first. How did the manatee man come up, and how did the cryptid thing come up?
Okay. Well, we'll start with the Manatee Man because there's a bit of story to that. In that the uh, the Manatee Man was something I took because there is a park in Laporte.
Okay.
It's called Soldiers Memorial Park in Laporte, Indiana, and it's on Stone Lake, which is a very very small, very shallow lake. And I spent a lot of time, especially with my son, very early on, in about 2 feet of water. And I am a heavy set dude. I'm a short, fat, furry little man. And like my happy place, and I used to tell people if I ever really went hedonistic and I got tired of helping people and I decided I was just going to live for my own amusement, I would have a house on a lake like that, and I'd just spend the rest of my life, in warm water, floating around like a manatee, pausing only to eat and other necessities. So part of the uh, self-defamating humor I have is I am the mighty manatee man, master of marketing, which came out in a series of comments when Brian K. Morris was running Nevermind the Furthermore, because it was a
Oh,
morning show. And the cryptid thing, I don't quite know who or how it started. Now, I am and there isn't a lot of time on this program to discuss it, but you'll have to take my. I have been a minor urban legend because I used to go for long walks with a lantern on foggy days,
Oh,
and some people misconstrued what I was and decided that it was the Wizard of Southaven and looking for lost souls or something. So for a while,
mhm.
I was misidentified as a literal urban legend to the point people argued with me that that's not you, that can't be you. And the great thing is, it's taken enough of a name for itself that allegedly the Wizard of Southaven is still spotted. So I don't know if enough people just believe in it that there's a psychosis or it's a manifestation, but I find that very delightful. The
So,
crypt, yes.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, 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 go on. Yes, so.
Well, I was gonna ask you a new question.
Mhm.
So I think we all got started watching Nevermind the Furthermore um, when Brian K. Morris was a host.
Yes.
Um, how did you end up taking over for Brian?
Um, we have to rewind to 2019, 2020 for a while to get the basis for this, because we have to talk about what Brian did. And Brian did Nevermind the Furthermore in its context as a safe place for people amongst, aside from just promoting things, but to come and escape the absolute oppressive tension. It was for about, usually about an hour, sometimes several if we could keep him talking. The the one time of the day where the pandemic and all the weirdness that was 2020 wasn't happening and we weren't alone in lockdown. And it was a heroic effort on his part, because broadcasting takes a lot out of you. You have to sort of turn on, and I don't know if that makes sense, but you have
Oh
to
yeah,
light up to
definitely.
do the job. And there's always a sag after broadcasting, and he went every day for a couple of years, and he
No,
stepped
unbelievable.
down, and he had some health difficulties,
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
and he needed to step down, and he was talking to me, and he wanted to cancel the program because he thought he couldn't do it anymore. And
Oh,
I
okay.
I was talking about how this is so important to the community. There's got to be some other way. Uh, and he was just, honestly, he was despondent because he thought he was failing everyone, because
Okay.
that's the kind of man Brian K. Morris is. Like, he's the kind of guy who gives everything he has, and then he's like bleeding because he's been wounded taking care of people, and is going to apologize for bleeding on the carpet, you know? And he asked if, and he was talking about a whole bunch of other people tried to get him to go on their networks to promote their stuff, you know? And we talked, and I think I was the only person who it wasn't about my stuff, it was about maintaining the community, because it was too important to end. And he goes, I think you're the only one who could do it. And when somebody trusts you with something like that, it was kind of decided, Nevermind the Furthermore had to become kind of like Doctor Who, where the showrunner had to regenerate. And the first or second episode I ran was actually had a little bit of that shtick. My early ones were
Right.
really bad, but because the goal wasn't, it's not Nick Tockert promoting things and himself and others.
Right.
It's you know, a place where, yeah, I talk about a couple people who help. I throw, these are the books I'm doing. I get that out of the way, and then it's you guys, because you guys are what makes it great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the essence of the show. I think that's what makes it interesting. I mean, you guys do occasionally have guests, but
Right.
really when you get right down to it, the audience is kind of like the guest when you think
The
about it.
audience is the trick with Nevermind the Furthermore is the audience is the host. I'm just a moderator. And I run commercials to promote some people at about every 15 minutes because I've looked at medical stuff. It sounds so precise, but medical studies. And one of the biggest hazards we have is sitting for long periods of time. So if I run an ad every 15 minutes or so, that gives everybody a chance to get up and
Right,
because they're not typing as much, they can stretch. It's a reminder. It's like I'll stop and go, okay, everybody, be sure to drink something
right.
because creatives get caught up. And yeah, I suffered from a condition called helium hand, where I need some help. Whoop, the hand goes up. But I really
Well, so are
I
you talking
count
about
never.
Carl's comment?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
So here's the question that I have about that whole thing. Do you think that that Brian brought that up around you hoping that you would volunteer, or do you think that or have you not even thought about that?
Brian is a smart enough person that he rarely does anything for just one reason.
Right,
But I don't. I look at it as um, I was I how do I put this? I go through life looking for opportunities. I'm always looking for opportunities, but unlike the people who are like, I'm looking for a business opportunity. I'm looking for that where you feel like this is the place you're supposed to be.
right,
And I've really kind of honed my perception. I'll be driving down the road and I'll look at a traffic pattern and go, I don't like this traffic pattern. I'll get off the road and have a sandwich or something, get back on the road, drive down a few miles, and there's a wreck. Or
right.
I feel like stopping by Goodwill. I don't know why, and I'll find something that I wanted or needed. It's just kind of there is a flow to the universe, and if you can find the right kind of groove, it's why I try to bring the word groovy back. You end up where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be there. And
Oh, okay.
talking to Brian, it gave me a chance to pay him back a bit by taking the mantle of the program. I took the weight with it so I could pay him back for the good that he did because not many people know this really. I was diagnosed with some pretty heavy stuff in 2019,
Oh, wow.
and I had symptomatic narcolepsy,
Oh, wow.
which meant because I had been driving down the road at 73 miles an hour talking to my wife, and I fell dead asleep
Yeah,
driving
that'll
down the road.
scare you.
Yeah, and so for the year of 2019, I was housebound.
Okay.
I was in basically lockdown. I couldn't drive. I was very weak. It took a long time for them to give me a sleep study and realized I didn't sleep. I actually just passed out from lack of oxygen. I was
Oh, okay.
I like when they put me on a sleep study, they rolled the crash cart out because they thought I had died on the bed because my vitals had dropped that low.
Hmm.
And so they put me on a breathing machine, and I've had to build back up and other issues related to that. But I had had a year of personal lockdown in 2019 that ended basically in February of 2020.
Yeah.
So it's like I did a year more time than everybody else, going into
Right.
that whole thing.
It.
And I was literally trapped on my couch for huge parts of it because I could barely walk, I could barely move. I developed some nerve conditions where my hands I'm an artist. It's taken me a couple, oh god, I'm not sure how long. Maybe a year of intense
Uh,
therapy.
So it
to
affects
get.
your hands too.
Oh yeah, I have severe uh, carpal tunnel, cubital tunnel, and peripheral neuropathy in my hands and feet.
Right.
So when I wrote Luke Stone's Hybrids: The Sons of Gods, the role playing game, the RPG part, the quick play, I did it by literally grabbing two fat permanent markers and stabbing out the letters because my fingers wouldn't work. But I had a contract and I fulfill my contracts.
Jesus.
So for me, the journey to get back where I can draw and do things has been intense and, just agonizing. So I appreciate it. It's also why if you go through my deviant art gallery, because that's been going on for 20 years about, you'll see my art suddenly take a kind of downward spiral and slowly build back up in quality, literally because my hand stopped working and I had to build back up into it.
Well, yeah,
But
I wanted to
yeah.
mention that I really like your art.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I've watched quite a few of the drawing streams that you do, and the thing that I find neat about it is that it can you I like how you kind of have like you show the brush strokes and you don't necessarily smooth everything over, which a lot of digital artists don't necessarily do. Um I don't know, I like the fact that it feels spontaneous even though there's a sense of spontaneity to it even though it's digital art, which a lot of digital art doesn't have.
Well, thank you. Part of it that helps is the vast majority of what I do is spontaneous. It's very rare that I sit down in front of a page or um, a blank canvas on this, and I go, I am drawing this character. They are doing this.
Okay.
A lot of times I'll put the circle down and I watch it evolve. And that's led to a lot of flexibility for me. It's why I get to play really cool games with my chat, like give me a name, and
Yeah.
they'll give me a random, either a name from usually a property I know nothing about, or they'll make up a name, and I can draw that as a character with no other input, just what that name fires off in the randomness that is my mind.
Oh, cool.
Uh, I like to play with prompts. I love the different tobers. You have Inktober and all that, where they just say, scurry.
Right.
And my book, Art and Tales Volume 1, which has a couple typos in it I have to get fixed. But,
Oh
um,
no.
well, it's shocking that as somebody who's mildly dyslexic and has hands that don't obey them, my typing is atrocious. Uh, but
You always notice the typos after, like the day after it goes to
oh
print, right?
yeah, and I mean, I poured over it, I looked over it, and then there was a glitch with Amazon, and I really think it took, like, I uploaded the wrong version, but it went out, and it is what it is, and I may fight it later, but formatting for Amazon is something I find very challenging when I have images, and it's just an ongoing battle. But what I did is, if you go on my DA page, a lot of times, not always, I'll do a picture that's come to mind, and as I'm drawing it, I get to know the character. I don't know where this comes from. It's not planned, but a character just sort of starts to emerge, and as I'm doing it, a story will emerge. And sometimes it's with a prompt where somebody said this, uh, and sometimes it's just I can't tell you. It's just I'm drawing, and then the mental matrixing that lets us see faces in the clouds starts letting me see characters. And once I have a character, maybe because I've been a DM so long with running so many games with so little prep
Oh, cool.
that it happens live, and people love seeing that. So I've started doing that a bit of uh, as my part of my shtick. And the downside is it's very difficult for me to get uh, like sequential art is actually very hard because I have to have the story first.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that, like, while you were talking, I was thinking, it'd be very hard to be a comic book artist with that kind of attitude, but of just like, sitting down at the drawing board and seeing what happens. But now that I'm saying it, that sounds kind of like an interesting way to go about doing things.
It's challenging and it's very much on my bucket list. I have a couple things I want to do as graphic novels, but right now I have so many projects that are up in the air. You see, I hate the idea of
Isn't
being a
that the
hypocrite,
hardest thing?
and I give my buddy Richie Asplin, who's a brilliant guy, he really is, but he, like me, has that ADD, a thousand things at 40% and 60% and 30% complete.
Right.
And what happens is I have all you end up with all these things that are slowly completing, and then every once in a while they start rattling down. But that only happens if I stop putting new ones. So right now I am personally in an arc of I'm trying to fix a couple projects that I've had, and I'm going not by interest but by completion. Like how close, what's the minimal what has the minimal effort to be done? It's done. And if that means sometimes a typo or several don't don't get gleaned, I'd rather have a done flawed product that I can do a different edition later or I can edit later than nothing. And I think that's one that took me a long time to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think um I think to me that's one of the hardest things for me, um is knowing that it's going to be at least 10 years before I get all of the ideas in my head, you know, somewhere where I can present them to the world. And prioritizing things can be difficult too.
Oh yes.
Like what makes this idea more important than that idea?
Uh, See, for me, part of my problem is I have uh, issues with short and mid range memory. Actually, across the board, I have memory issues.
Okay.
Um, so my great fear is the loss.
Right.
So I can't hold it because it can fade. Many times it's like that really cool dream. What happened? And there's nothing because be, if I do a drawing right, and I'm doing multiple layers, and I like to do that so people can see how I do it. I have the blue constructions, the shapes and the placement, and then I'm doing the inking, and then I'm doing the flats, and then the shading, and then the lights. If something goes wrong and the shading gets deleted, I can figure it out again because I have the other layers.
Right.
But with my mind, very often, if I don't get some of it down right now, it can literally just be erased from existence. And it's horrible because for that process, I'll have people, you were talking about blah, blah, blah. And I don't remember the conversation, but I can go, that sounds like something I said. And I can run off of it, but it's not necessarily the tracks I would have laid.
Right.
And my poor, beautiful wife who suffers through my writing style is I will write, ting, 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 I have this, and then I don't anymore.
Right.
And she says it's like hitting a brick wall because I am the king of the pantsers. It's like, ticka, ticka, ticka. What? I don't answer. Well, what happened next? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. I knew up to this, and I don't know. Now I may wake up at 3 o'clock tomorrow and know for a bit more.
So on that topic, I don't know if
Yeah,
if this is a fear of yours.
yeah.
Um, a big fear of mine is witnessing a crime and not being able to describe anything, like not being able to remember exactly what happened because um
That's really
I-
cool, by the way. What you have going on right there looks like a almost a foil alternate.
yeah, it's
Sorry.
almost like a what do they call that, like when you reverse the image, um like you make all the darks light and then
Oh, I know, and the word's gonna hit me later, but yes, we I know exactly, and I really like that. That was very very intense. Uh, and oh, that's just neat. Sorry, you were saying?
um what was I saying? Yeah, a big fear of mine is that I'm going to witness a crime and not know what, and not going to be able to describe anything, because I know that I've had that problem where before where somebody asked me, like, can you describe this person, and I'm just stammering and stuttering and I have no ability to describe them whatsoever.
Um, it's interesting because it might shock some of you to know I have an attention deficit disorder. You know, but that's really a poor. Uh, the terminology is wrong because how I evaluate what deserves my attention naturally is just a different process. Now,
Right.
I was brought up in a household. My father has PTSD from Vietnam,
Right.
and he sort of taught and instilled a type of hypervigilance on us. And then I have my own traumas that I incurred at points in my life that I learned to take that hypervigilance, and it's on almost a quick release. So, like when I go out, my mind is almost always playing what's wrong with this picture in a crowded area. And
Oh,
until I find something wrong, I'm still on active ping, you know? And so we actually had a sociology class, I'm sorry, psychology class, where they did the random test of someone came in, uh, burst into the room, hit a lady who was visiting, grabbed her purse and ran. And everyone, they were asking what was going on. And, everybody had different answers. And I gave a description complete with sketch because I have a under trauma, almost a sketch, what I call sketchographic memory. It's not photographic memory, but, if you hit me early, uh, I'll be able to sketch what happened and give you the key details that stand out.
oh wow.
But that was a trained set of response, not a natural one.
Right.
And yeah, so how draw like stage? Carl says he staged the same thing for his Psych 101 course, and that's what it was. It was Psych 101. I basically damaged my psych professors to the point that they had to take and add qualifiers like usually instead of always. And yeah, you're right, it can. It's funny for somebody who is such an absent-minded. When I switch over to a defensive mental state, it's just like a physical mental state, defensive physical state. You a martial artist tends to assume a fighting stance of some sort. There are mental stances one can take too, and if you endure enough and you survive it, it's possible to learn that naturally. It's less unpleasant to learn it in a controlled environment, but it would be a fear. if it weren't for
Yeah.
that. And I do worry about the losses I have in memory, about the people I love, about times and places, because I have lost whole years of my life I just have no recollections of.
Oh, wow.
So that's formed a lot in me where I tend to be incredibly truthful, not necessarily for any morality. I mean, that's obviously a side point, but also because I couldn't mechanically remember a lie anyway. So I mean,
Oh,
what will happen
interesting.
is sometimes I will think I remember and misremember something, but very rarely am I, going to do a deception on somebody because
That
then I'd
sounds
have
like a
to
good idea.
remember that. So it's mechanically very difficult.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to be honest.
Well, yes, that I believe much like Brian K. Morris, you it's best to never do anything for just one reason. That's a good measure for the practicality of stuff. And if you're doing something for just one reason, it better be one heck of a reason, you know?
Right. So I think I'm going to finish up the comments here.
Okay.
We have one more. The angels and saints in Michelangelo's paintings were bar patrons in his local tavern. He studied them and put them into his art, at least from what I've read. Interesting.
Yeah, Michelangelo really loved to study the common people. It's um, it's interesting. It's There are so many people who only focus on the extremes of beauty, but Michelangelo, like many artists who came later, find the beauty in the uncelebrated, and then he can put it in such a way where you can see the beauty he sees in them. So it's very inspirational. It's also a wonderful philosophy.
Yeah, so I think we've gone about 20 minutes over.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
no, that's all right. I was enjoying the conversation, so that's why I didn't end it earlier. Um, if you guys, do you have anything else you want to add to the conversation?
Oh no, I'm quite content. I hope I've been at least of interest for you. I'm sorry I
Yeah, I
didn't get
mean,
to draw for folks. Maybe we'll do that next time.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, if you have anything to add, you can always just say it the next time you do. Never mind the furthermore, right?
Absolutely. I will be the next one is Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Thanks again, guys. I'm glad that we're getting some regular. I almost said customers, but
No,
regular
that's how it
viewers.
feels. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks so much, Carl. Thanks so much, Donna. Thanks, Angie. Uh, and of course, thank you, Nick, for coming on the show.
My absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.